Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is the veins of the lower extremity. And this is going to start, if you remember, with the arteries. We basically started at the heart and we worked our way down to the feet, all right, or to the foot. And here we're going to go from the foot back up. We're not going to get all the way to the heart on this video, but we're going to basically get up into the abdominal region with this. So let's go ahead and start. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the posterior, we're going to talk about the plantar venous arch. If you remember, on the other video, we had the plantar arch. All right, we had the plantar arch, and it supplies blood to the bottom of the foot. The plantar venous arch drains blood from the bottom of the foot. And then remember, it's also going to do the toes. All right, and the plantar venous arch is going to drain into the posterior tibial vein. And so if you notice, I used the word drain. That's what we call it when one vein goes into the next. When the blood goes from one vein to the next, we say it's draining into it. Now here's the difference. If you remember in the last video, we talked about the popliteal artery. In fact, we talked about the popliteal artery. And we said that the popliteal artery breaks into three pieces. We said it breaks into the posterior tibial artery, the posterior tibial artery, and the anterior tibial artery. And then we said it was also the fibular artery. Well, coming back, we have the fibular vein, all right? But the fibular vein drains into the posterior tibial vein. Okay, so the fibular artery came off the popliteal artery and went to the lateral part of the leg. The fibular vein coming back drains into the posterior tibial vein, which then goes to the popliteal artery, or popliteal vein. Now let's talk about on the other side. We're going to talk about the dorsal venous arch. Now this is on the top of the foot. Okay, so the dorsal venous arch is on the top of the foot. Okay, and what it does is it drains into the anterior tibial. It drains into the anterior tibial artery. Okay, and do me a favor, as you're writing notes, do it like this, because I'm going to be writing something in here. So it's going to drain into the anterior tibial vein. Okay, and this is going to be my anterior tibial vein right here. Now, also, and you know what, I'm going to just, for right now, I'm just going to put in my popliteal vein. So there's my popliteal vein again. Okay. Now, coming off the lateral part of the dorsal venous arch, remember this is the lateral side, okay? This is the outside of your leg, is another vein. Now it's going to come off the outside and then go posterior. But I'm just going to draw coming up the side. And it's going to come up and go into the popliteal vein. This is called the small saphenous vein. Okay, so my small saphenous vein comes off my dorsal venous arch on the lateral side, then goes behind the leg and drains into the popliteal vein. Now coming off the other side, if I have a small saphenous vein, I must have a great saphenous vein. Okay, so this is my great saphenous vein. Okay, and what my great saphenous vein is going to do, I'm going to draw an up arrow because we're not going to see the whole top of it yet. The great saphenous vein is going to drain, it drains into the femoral vein, in the inguinal region. Okay, and what I mean by that, it's up in the groin. Okay, so that's going to drain into the femoral vein up in the groin region. So let's go on. I'm going to erase this now. Just to reiterate though, once again, we have the popliteal vein. I had the anterior tibial vein draining into the popliteal vein. I had the small saphenous vein draining into the popliteal vein. And then just because we talked about it, I'm going to put this here. And then I have my posterior tibial vein, which drains into the popliteal. And then I'm just going to go like this too. I'm going to put my fibula vein is going to come across. I know I'm using the same colors, but it's going to come across and go into my posterior tibial vein and then up into the popliteal vein. Okay, so this is the hardest part of this. All right, if you can understand this, this is the hardest part. So I'm going to go on, and then what's going to happen is if I start down here with my popliteal vein, okay, let me make this. This is going to be my popliteal vein. This is my popliteal vein. My popliteal vein, if you remember, when we're talking about arteries, we said the femoral artery becomes the popliteal artery. Well, in this case, we're going backwards, so my popliteal vein becomes my femoral vein. Okay, and then what's going to happen is I am going to have, if you remember, I had my great saphenous vein, which we said is going to drain into my femoral vein. Right? That's going to drain into my femoral vein. So here's my femoral vein, my great saphenous vein, and they're going to come together, and then this is going to continue up, and now this is going to be called my external iliac vein. And if you remember, we had the external iliac artery, and this is going to be my internal iliac vein. So if you recall from last time, we said these two come to, when we were coming down on the arteries, we had, well, let me write it right now. We have the common iliac vein. Okay, so if you remember when we were coming down, we had the common iliac vein, which split into the external iliac vein, which became the femoral. We had the common iliac artery, which split into the internal iliac artery and the external iliac artery, which then became the femoral artery, which became the femoral vein. Now that we're going back up, we have the popliteal vein, which is right here. The femoral vein. Then we have the external and iliac veins draining into this vein right here, which becomes the common iliac. And then remember, we're only doing one side here. So I also have all this going on my other side. So this would be my common iliac vein on the other side. And they're going to come together and make the inferior, let me write this like this a little bit. This is going to be my inferior vena cava. And what this will do is this will go up through the abdominal region, and this is going to meet with the superior vena cava and form the vena cava, which drains into the heart, which we'll go through more of that later on. If you remember coming down, we had the aorta. Going back up, we have the inferior vena cava. Okay, so basically, this is the end of the veins of the lower extremity. Okay, so, and remember, the great saphenous vein didn't start at the popliteal. In fact, I'm going to go all the way down through the word popliteal, just so you can remember it was way down here in the venous arch. And I'm a little bit lower than you can see, but I'm going to form my venous arch like this. All right, and that's it.